Hi, everybody. I'm Teresa Griffith with First South Financial, and welcome to the Friends and Finances podcast. Today, I am with...
Hey, my name is Alex, also with First South. Nice to be here.
Good.
So today we're going to be talking about ways to improve or maybe build on an already decent credit score. But I think a great way to start the subject is just talking briefly what is a credit score? What is a credit report?
I like to give an example of what a credit report is by saying it's about how you pay your lunch money back. Because we all have those experiences when we're in the lunchroom with friends, whether it's at school or at work, and you don't have any money, and everybody else is eating, and you're hungry, and you didn't bring anything. Maybe you got out of home too fast. You're running late, so you look to borrow money from somebody. And I always go through the example of asking people, okay, if I came and I borrowed money from you and I paid it back, are you likely to loan money to me again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What if I borrowed money from you, I didn't pay you back, I came back to you again and said, hey, Alex, you know we're buds. We eat lunch together every day. Can you spot me again?
Oh, I don't know about it that time.
So maybe not, right?
Right.
So
that makes sense because you're not really building a good history with the person that you're not paying back. Okay.
Yeah, and it depends on how much it is too, right? You know, if it's $5, you might say, okay, I'll let the first $5 go. But if I come back and say, Alex, I need to get my car repaired, it costs $100, and I can get 50 of it. Can I borrow 50? If I've never paid you back, are you likely to give me that $50?
Okay, got you. And that's almost kind of like what is reported on a credit report. That's kind of how banks communicate.
It's exactly what it is. So what your credit report is how banks are looking at if you are paying your lunch money back.
Okay.
So it's as simple as that. So why don't you tell us what is on a credit report and who has access?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. That's a great analogy, by the way, to really explain it. There are going to be a few things that are on your credit report, and I'll kind of explain why they're important to really notate. Your identifying information is going to be on there. Oddly enough, credit reports do have errors. As important as they are, those errors can sometimes also have an adverse effect to your score. So when you are looking at your credit report, if you notice your identifying information is maybe slightly off, maybe your middle initial's wrong, there's addresses on there that you don't recognize, those are things to notate, maybe dispute. You're also going to see your credit accounts, your different trade lines with different banks and companies, whoever you've been borrowing for. That can include your student loans, your auto loans, anything like that are going to be considered trade lines on your credit report. Also, any inquiries. So anytime you're applying for credit, it showed that your credit was pulled. Those are going to stay on there for a little while as well, a couple years, and those have an effect on your score. So if you notice an inquiry on your credit report and you don't remember ever applying for credit, that might be something you have to dispute. So that's very important to notate what is on your credit report. Also, bankruptcies and collections. Anytime you didn't make a payment on something, anytime you stop paying a company is definitely going to show up on there. And of course, your lenders are going to have access to your credit report. So any bank, any credit union, your mortgage lenders, they will have access, even sometimes your landlords, because when you're renting, your score does play an important part. And it's why it's so important to really focus in on this topic and hopefully take something away from it. Sometimes even your employers, insurance companies can also have access to those.
So from what I understand, employers, if you're up for like some sort of certification, or you're handling money, or you have maybe a classification within the U.S. government, that credit report or credit score really comes into play there.
That credit report could matter. It's pretty surprising. We think that maybe it only matters for when you're trying to borrow money, but it could have effects in all aspects of your life, even when you're trying to apply for a job, possibly. That is possible. I think really let's get down to what affects our credit score, because that's really going to be what makes the difference, and is going to help our viewers really understand how they can improve or build the credit that they need to build. Yeah. What's like the most important thing, or one of the most important things that go into your credit score?
So the single most important thing is how you're paying your bills. So again, are you paying your lunch money back? And are you paying it on time? And are you paying for the full amount? So if I borrowed $5 from you and I only gave you $1 back, I still owe you $4.
Right.
Are you paying the amount due on time for the full amount? The full amount due. So that doesn't mean the entire balance of your credit card. That means what amount they're asking for when they send you the monthly statement.
Right. So example, if you have a balance of $1,000 on a credit card, they might only require a minimum of $25. As long as you're making the minimum of $25 payment
by the date due,
then that's still going to affect your score positively.
35%. That's 35%. The single largest portion of your credit score is on how you pay it back and do you pay it on time.
Absolutely. So paying it on time is definitely going to be up there. Another thing is probably credit utilization. We talk about this all the time when we go out and speak on credit. How much of your credit are you using? How much of it are you borrowing? Are you maxing out those credit cards every time you spend and not able to pay much back other than the minimum? That plays a key factor into it. That's also about 30% of your score, right?
Right. And how much should you use?
You shouldn't use more than 25%. You really want to avoid ever trying to max out a credit card. So for example, we'll go back to that $1,000 credit card. You wouldn't want to use more than $250 of it. You wouldn't want to, by the time that next cycle for your credit report comes around, you wouldn't have more than 25% on there so that you can really see an improvement in your score, because they see that you're not necessarily relying on the credit. You're just using it as a tool.
Right.
Right. And that makes up about 30% of your score.
Yeah. So we're at 65% already.
Yeah, already. We've already knocked out a big chunk of what impacts your score the most. So paying on time, how much of it that you're borrowing really plays a factor.
Yeah. And the length of time that you have credit available is important as well. So they call that the history of your credit use. So for example, I have a credit card that I had when I was in college. Okay. So say that was many years ago. The bank that I had that with was a small bank at the time, and it was bought by another bank, and which was bought by another bank, which was bought by another bank. So now it's with one of these huge behemoth organizations that I typically would not do business with. Nothing against them. It's just I prefer credit unions, but it is my oldest line of credit. Yeah. And your credit score is, or your credit report in your score can be affected by the overall age of your credit. So if I cut that one out and I just had two that I opened up in the past, say 5 years, then my credit history is only 5 years old. Whereas,
because it takes an average, right, of all of those.
It takes an average, right? So if I have one that was 10 years and one that was 5 years, then maybe my credit history is 7.5 years. But if I had a one that's 30 years and one that's 5 years, then my average is considerably at 17 plus years, right?
And that's one way you can control it. So maybe not closing some of your oldest accounts.
Correct.
The other part of that is the fact that it just takes some time. So if you're newer in establishing credit, just get started as soon as possible is what I hear from that. Because again, it takes some patience to also improve your score, also build upon your score.
Yeah,
but making decisions like that, if you already have established credit, not closing your oldest trade lines is really smart.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So I have like one contribution that I make annually, and I have it go on that card so that, and when it comes due, it's just posted on that card. So every year there's activity on that card. It doesn't go dormant. And it shows that card is active, and also keep kind of a lower a credit limit on there as well. Yeah,
absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So of course your history of credit use, and then another thing is going to be your credit mix. So diversity in what is on your credit report. So not just having 2 or 3 credit cards, maybe also having an auto loan, a mortgage, possibly even student loans could help really improve your score. But maybe I think that's about 10% of the factor of your score. And being able to have that diversity and show that you can pay different types of loans off.
Yes. Yeah. It's really good to have at least a credit card and an installment loan. So as those drop off, like my mortgage dropped off. And so
and
now
that would be an installment loan?
That's an installment loan. And so once that dropped off, my score took a little bit of a dip, but because now I only have credit cards on there. So, so it can affect. And the last last 10% is inquiries. So can you talk a little bit about inquiries?
Yes, I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning. So that's when you're applying for credit. Of course, there are actually two types of inquiries. So you have your soft inquiries. That might be when you're possibly getting a promotion. Maybe you've seen something in the mail from a credit card company saying you qualify for 0% interest or anything like that. They probably did more like a soft inquiry. So something that doesn't actually affect your credit score, making it go down. But the hard inquiries, when you're actually applying for credit, that is definitely going to affect your score. So you don't want to go into, for example, every single store that's offering you a 10% discount, $20 off your purchase, and just sign up for a credit card. You don't want to necessarily go in there and do that every time, because that is going to affect your score. Those stay on your credit report for 2 years. So they don't just disappear just because you've been making some on-time payments. They're on there for 2 years. It's recommended that you don't have more than 2 or 3 within those 2 years. I think about the only exception would probably be when you're maybe shopping for an auto loan. Right. We've all been there before. You go to the dealership, they maybe pull your credit about 8 times. That might freak you out. You might think your score is going to dip significantly, but normally that's considered just one inquiry, because the credit lenders and everyone know that you're trying to shop for a car. So
that goes across like 1 or 2 weekends, so that if you went to 5 or 6 different dealerships and they all pull your credit, 8 times, then all of that's combined in the mind of the algorithms. Okay. So they are looking at that as one pull, even though it's because they know you're pulling credit for a car.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we kind of know the things that affect your score, but if people are looking to improve or build upon their score, they need to know how they can see their credit report. So how would you recommend that they go about doing that? Yes.
So we talked about hard and soft inquiries. This will be a soft inquiry. And this is, you go to annualcreditreport.com. It's the only place you can go and actually get it absolutely for free. Annualcreditreport.com. We'll put it in the notes at the end. And while there, you can pull from the 3 different credit bureaus, so TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Okay. And you'll be able to pull everything and see all of your trade lines. So if you're looking to figure out how much debt you have, that's a really good place to start. Go to your credit report, pull it. The cool thing about the annualcreditreport.com is that it's a little bit of a misnomer, because you can actually pull it weekly. All 3 credit bureaus, you can pull it weekly. So that was one good thing that came out of COVID, is that you can pull your credit report weekly. So take advantage of that. It won't give you your score, but on that site, they will give you the opportunity to purchase the score if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that sounds like a great idea. I think also just to add to that, what else would be on there are like any type of collections or anything. It'll actually show you the company that they're with. So if they don't look familiar, you can dispute them. Or if you want to get them taken care of and removed very quickly, you can go ahead and be able to call those companies and really know where you need to be sending that money to start repairing.
Yeah, and along those same lines, make sure that the name is spelled correctly. Make sure that I heard a story of 2 women. Their names were exactly the same. They were about the same age. They were both Americans, but one lived in London.
Oh, wow.
And so they had the same name. They pulled their credit reports. Their reports were mixed together. They found each other online, and now they've started a friendship.
Well, anything can happen, I guess, right?
Yeah, but they have together fought to get their records split so that they can each claim the specific parts. So that was very interesting. You have to make sure it's you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you see on the card. So, Alex, why does a credit score matter? Why are we talking about it?
Great question. Yeah, so a credit score is going to matter because honestly, it could save you, it could be a matter of thousands of dollars that it could be saving you over years of time. For example, with auto loans in itself, your credit score being in a certain range could get you a better interest rate in the long run. So when you do have to go get a new car, which a lot of us do rely on driving a vehicle and possibly having to get a loan for that, For example, if you go to myfico.com, you can actually put in the information for, say you're trying to purchase a $25,000 car. It'll show you a breakdown of the different interest rates and how much interest you'll be paying on the total of that loan. Say if it's a 5-year loan, someone with a higher score of 700 and above might be paying only $5,000 in interest over a 5-year period of just paying the minimum balance on that auto loan, as opposed to someone who has a lower score, maybe in the 500 range, low 600s, they're paying maybe 10,000 or more. So double, if not more, of what someone with a higher score is paying. So one of those things is definitely going to be saving you money.
And the monthly payment's going to be different too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So your monthly payments are going to be higher if you have a higher interest rate, right? So now it's also putting a strain on how much you're able to spend on other things you might need throughout life, throughout your months, because you're having to pay way more monthly, maybe a couple $100 more monthly than you normally would for an auto loan if your score was already where you needed it to be. Another reason why it's really important to have a good score is just in case there are emergencies or life is coming up. Maybe you need to apply for emergency credit. Maybe you need that credit card or something like that, maybe even a home equity line of credit to secure your house. But now you've already put some type of negative impact on your score. You're not able to get qualified when an emergency does come up. It's very, very beneficial if your score is where it needs to be. You can always get those emergency funds. You're going to get approved.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and something else that's important to understand is that a credit report and credit score have nothing to do with your income. So you can be making $20,000 a year, or you can be making $2 million a year. A $2 million a year income may have a credit score in the 600s or in the 500s. Doesn't mean that the person is paying their bills on time, but somebody that may make $20,000 or $40,000 a year can have an excellent score of 800 or higher. Yeah. So it makes no difference. You just have to make sure you live within your means and that you are paying on time.
Absolutely. So kind of just to wrap up, if you are, we're just going to talk about maybe the different places you might be when it comes to your credit report. So say, for example, if you're in the repairing stage of credit, it's very, very important that you stop the bleeding. You're more than likely repairing your credit because you've overspent on your credit cards. You've maxed out maybe some of your credit cards. So your utilization is very, very high. So your score is dropping. You have to stop the bleeding. You have to start trying to build towards a savings, which we've talked about a little bit in a previous podcast, but you need to start building your emergency savings, your own savings, start making your minimum payments, because again, the most important part of your credit is that 35% is making on-time payments.
Or maybe even adding to it.
Maybe even adding to it, absolutely. And then that way, as you're building your savings, you're not relying on credit to pay for emergencies that do come up. So again, stop the bleeding, don't get any more new trade lines, and absolutely start making your payments on time.
Yeah. And for those that are building credit, for those that are just starting out, or maybe they've relied on a spouse for credit. My grandmother didn't have any credit when she was in her 80s because she relied on her spouse for everything or paid cash for things. So she couldn't get cable. So if you're trying to establish new credit, you want to get a card and make a purchase of something that you need, not something that's just willy-nilly, like, oh, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy a new dress.
Just to be disciplined, right?
You want to make sure that you're buying something, like maybe you need a new laptop or something like that. So you make something that's a sizable purchase, and then maybe you pay a third of it off in the first month.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay the whole thing off. If you pay off the entire balance, then nothing gets reported to the credit bureaus because you've taken it back to a zero balance. So you want to make sure that you are spreading those payments across, but you're doing more than the minimum so that as people look at your credit a couple of months ahead, they will see, oh, they made a $2,000 purchase and they were paid $700 $700 on the first month, they paid $700 the second month, and they paid it off the third month. That shows that you're not, again, reliant on that credit card and that you do handle that appropriately. And maybe that is too much money. Maybe you handle it over 10 months, instead of the 3. But that's how you build credit. You want to use it responsibly, and pay it off slowly, but not too slowly.
Yeah.
Now, we have, First South Financial has one of the coolest ways to build credit that I think that I've ever heard of. So can you tell us about the Fresh Start Saver?
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a Fresh Start Saver product. It's for building or repairing credit. Basically, you get to pick a limit. It could be a limit of $500, $1,000, or $2,000. It's not money that you're giving up front, but it is going to appear like a loan on your credit report. So essentially, you pick that limit based off of what monthly payment you think you can pay. We're reporting to the credit bureau that is a loan, but that money is actually going to go on hold in the secondary savings for you. You're going to make your monthly payments each month on time. And as you pay, that money will get released on the end into your savings. So you save whatever that amount is. Maybe you chose the $1,000 one, you saved $1,000, and each month you pay on time. We report to the credit bureaus that you're paying on time for a loan. Another good thing about it is that, say for some reason life happens, you're not working and you can't make those monthly payments anymore. We never report missed payments. We just close the loan out as paid in full and release whatever you did pay into it. So yeah, it's absolutely great credit building product.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's an installment loan. So if you have a credit card that you're trying to build your credit, and then you add this to it, which is an installment loan, you've got both. So your credit mix is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Alex, it's been such a pleasure talking with you about credit today.
Yes, it was a lot of information, hopefully a lot of helpful tips, whether you're improving, building, or trying to repair. Hopefully you were able to take something away from this today.
And we've got some information. Just follow that QR code that you see either on the screen or in our notes, and you'll be able to get some information directly from us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.